lives. Without political power, we are functionally powerless. Our government taxes us, and then we bear the burden of being overtaxed by our systems built over time to be obstacles to Black joy. Without political power, we will continue to be victims of a systematic erasure. The Black population here has been on a steady decline for over 30 years. Is the lack of Black political power a part of that decline?
I don't see how it can't be. I believe it. It has to be. Anywhere, think about it like this. Do you enjoy being in spaces where you don't feel like you're ever represented? Do you enjoy being in places where you don't feel like you have a voice? Do you enjoy being in places where you don't feel like the larger group or entity cares about what you need or helps you get what you need? And I think that's happened over time here with the Black community, is that as other communities have grown, which is great, there's been a lack of intentional effort to make sure that a community that's brought great and rich history to this area, to the South Bay, has been able to be sustained. And some people will say, well, bootstraps and that, survival of the fittest, and that's on you. But we can point to many different markers that show intentional and unintentional disenfranchisement of our community. And when you have a community that's dwindling, it takes more intentional effort to help sustain them. And without seeing ourselves represented, I don't think we've ever had a county supervisor that's been Black. And we've had very few City of San Jose council members. Then we look at some of the commissions and we think about, well, how are the entities that are sustaining Black life and Black community being funded and being supported? And how are the needs that our communities have being addressed? How are we thinking about ensuring that Black people's specific needs are being addressed? And we don't typically see that, and I think having more representation would be powerful.
Jahmal, you are one of the busiest people in our community.
I appreciate that.
Well, it's a fact of life. I know you work with at least a couple of very prominent organizations in the Black community. Tell me about what you're doing.
A few things that I do. In 2020, I became one of the co-chairs of the Black Leadership Kitchen Cabinet, which is a coalition that seeks to advance the goals and the needs and the support of Black Americans and African ancestry folks here in Santa Clara County. I am a member and participant of the Race Equity Action Leadership Coalition, which is an organization of a coalition of organization leaders, nonprofit leaders, and community leaders that are working with the local government and local entities to make sure we have racial equity in our services and in our budgets. I also am working with a group of folks, as you know, on something called the Sawabona Collective, which we hope to use that vehicle to build power and education and mobilize Black people in our political sphere here. And in my day job, I work at San Jose State University and do partnerships and diversity education. So I do a lot of stuff, and I show up when I'm needed. I like to be there for the community. I like to be at our events. I like to take my kids to the events and so they can see Black people, communities of color working together and really be entrenched in San Jose and Santa Clara County, because this is where we live. This is where we create community and build relationships. And this is where we seek to be for a while. So.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for doing so much.
Absolutely.
What would you say is kind of the core difference between the Black Leadership Kitchen Cabinet and the Sawabona Collective?
Yeah, I get that a lot. One of the biggest core differences is that the Sawabona Collective right now is not as established as the BLKC, right? We're new. We're building it from the ground up. But the other big difference is the BLKC, if you think of it in like student organization terms that you may have it in high schools or colleges, it is like the Black Student Union of Black organizations. It is meant to be a representation of Black people and Black organizations and entities, and a space where they can come together to advance all the different needs, talk through different strategies, talk through different needs, build community, and work together to help support and grow and sustain our community. So that can look like a lot of different things. It can look like social programming. It can look like community efforts around food justice. It can look like raising money to support Black History Month. It can look like advocating for or against policy that may harm or help Black people thrive. And it does all that in kind of a volunteer basis. I volunteer as the chair. All of us volunteer our time to come to the meetings. Some people represent other organizations. But we volunteer our time and use our knowledge and resources to make sure that we're bringing that all to the collective table. Sawubona Collective is very different. It is a very intentional effort to make sure that African and African ancestry folks here in this county are educated, mobilized, and ready to be engaged in local politics. We want to build power through our voice, through our vote, and through our participation. And we recognize that we need an entity that is solely dedicated on that, on ensuring that we understand from the Youth Commission to the Arts Commission, all the way to being on the County Board of Supervisors and running for Assembly and so on. We want people to understand how each of these layers and levels of local government impact our lives as Black people. And we want our voice to be heard and felt. And we want our participation to elicit outcomes that help not only our community thrive, but all of those that are marginalized and struggling. And we know we need it to continue to sustain ourselves. And so that's the core difference. The Sawubona Collective, what we're hoping for is to build a 501c3 nonprofit that is fully self-sustaining. And then people within Sawubona would be part of BLKC to talk about those efforts. And so they're very different. The goals are different. It just so happens that some of the people are the same. And what that shows is that we are very committed as Black folks here to our well-being and sustaining and growing our community.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about our well-being.
Absolutely.
I think you're absolutely right. I'm the vice chair of the Planning Commission. And if I weren't sitting in that seat, no one would mention to city staff that your engagement process did not adequately engage Black people.
Right.
It would never happen.
Right.
So without that seat at the table, we're not even engaged in the same conversation at all.
And there are some people that care. There are. I like to think about some of the work that Susan Ellenberg's done around Black infant health and maternal health equity, supporting the BLKC with Black Family Day, right? There are people that care, and at the same time, it's different when you're at the table making those decisions. It is good to have allies of all the communities, and it's also really powerful to have those communities being represented in those spaces. Yeah, that's something we hope to change.
It's easy to forget you if you're not at the table.
It
might not even be intentional. Yep. It certainly isn't willful, let's say. But if you're not at the table, nobody knows you're there.
Yes.
I used to say, if you don't speak my name, do I disappear?
It's powerful.
I think that's a reality. So you recently had an experience that's unique for most of us. You did something that most people wouldn't do, didn't want to do. You stood up.
I didn't want to do it.
Yeah, but somebody convinced you.
Right.
But you stood up and you said, hey, I want to be counted. I want to be counted for my community. I want to represent District 3 as an interim council member. Yeah. I want to put my life and career on hold to support my community. Yeah. That's some pretty big stuff.
I appreciate that.
So how did that work out for you?
I think all things work in the way that they're supposed to work, so I'll say great to that extent. I learned a lot. The result was not what I was hoping for. And I chose to be the interim because, you know, someone who I'd done some good work with in coalition, Gabby Chavez Lopez, was running for the seat, and I believe in her. And I wanted to make sure that the work of our coalitions and our organizations was being thought of and represented during that short term. And I live in District 3. I've only lived in District 3. I work in District 3, and I really care about it. And I wanted to stand up and continue to be a leader. And you can only ask people so many times to do something if you're not willing to do it yourself. And so I said, you know what, I can put myself out there in this short term. It'll be a brief adjustment to life, but I think it's worth it. And I believe I was the best person. I mean, I know I was the best person. I mean, it's not a belief. I was absolutely the best person. You can go back and watch the video if you want.
Well, you had, 40 people show up to say you were the best person?
Roughly. It might have been like 30 that spoke. I had, you know, another additional 15 to 20 letters. And I had a lot of support. I think people really trust me. People believe in me, and they know I'm genuine. They know what they hear and what they see is what they're gonna get. And I don't think anyone's questioned that. And I was really prepared because, again, I really do care about our district and I care about the people. I ride my bike and my scooter through it every day. I can see some of the challenges. And it wasn't just a checkbox to me. I actually had been building plans, like what would I do in these 6 months? How would I connect my work in coalition to the work that needs to happen in this district? How would I connect my work at San Jose State to the work that we can do and needs to happen in this district? And I've been really thoughtful, and you can hear that in my prepared answers. And they didn't vote for me.
You know it's interesting because I know that the declaration from the City Council was that we needed to do this interim role in order to keep the community constant.
Sure.
To make sure the community was supported.
Yep.
And to ensure that, you know, people were represented. They pay their taxes and that they were being represented.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that was the actual playing field?
No, absolutely not. And I want to be clear. I'm not bitter about this. I'm disappointed because I don't feel like the decision that was made espoused all those values that you talked about. Right? I think there was a clear choice and where to go and who could do that. You know, you got a person who works daily in the community, who's in touch with folks from seniors to students, a former clinical therapist, somebody who understands building trust, a vested parent currently in the district. And that's not to take anything away from anyone else who was there. But I know I acquitted myself and represented myself and what I think the district would have been proud of in a way that showed that I was sincere and that I was really cared. And the way that the vote went was disappointing. I don't think the actual vote showed a care for District 3. I don't think the people who voted not for me, and not because they didn't vote for me, but I don't think they voted for what the district actually needed. And that's disappointing. And to me, it may underscore a lack of care for the people in our district, for what we need, and for what many folks wrote and showed up to ask for. And we got to ask some real questions if our elected leaders don't seem to care about the needs of the people. And I'm willing to ask those questions, and I think we should. I think we should at every election.
I think that's a really good point. Because if they're not there to serve the people, then exactly who are they serving?
Absolutely.
And I'll say that. I think you were a great candidate.
Well, thank you.
But when you think about, there's an old term, black power, but I'll change it, black political power.
Yeah.
How do you characterize that? What does that look like?
I think if you look at all the movements historically that black people have been at the forefront of, it looks like change and betterment for this entire nation. like black people fought and gave their lives to end slavery, and people had rights. They fought and gave their lives to end Jim Crow and civil rights, and people had more rights. Everybody had rights, and everybody could build off of that. When you think of feminist movements and LGBTQ movements and people getting the rights to vote and to work and to live in places that aren't redlined and that aren't segregated, go to schools. We think of 2020, how the Black Lives Matter movement on the literal back of black folks who had been killed in many ways by police and other citizens, and getting treated unfairly. That movement changed the nation for everyone. And so when I think of black political power, I don't think of it in isolation as like, this is only black people doing this thing for black people. I think our collective nature as folks of African ancestry shows that we understand, that we believe that I am because you are, right? We believe that my life exists because your life exists, and my well-being exists because your well-being is something that's coming to fruition as well. And that's not an American principle. That's not something that's centered in the United States. It's very individual, and we're a much more collective, community-based people. And I think when we have black people who can build community and be represented, it just makes for a better landscape for everyone. And I think we keep a moral compass because of our history, that we never want to see anybody being oppressed in that way, and we want to make sure that the lives of our people and other people are good, and that people are thriving. And the numbers bear out that we need to have intention around specific communities. Even with this attack on DEI and all the stuff coming from our federal government, we know that not to be true, and we know we need to be intentional. And we're willing to fight, and that's why I think seeing us represented again on boards, commissions, and elected office, it would change the game. It would change the game for everybody.
So the opposite of that would be the lack of power, of political power.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Not for the black community specifically, but for other communities as well.
You know, you never want to see a community disenfranchised to the point where they don't exist. And again, I think that every community brings so much richness to this area that we need everybody to be represented, and we need all the stories to be told. We need all the culture to shine. We need all the events. We need all of the voices, because it makes this collective habitat that much more fruitful and enriching for everyone. And it does nobody any good to see black people overrepresented in the criminal justice system, in the unhoused community, you know, getting suspended from schools, and so on and so on and so on. That's a collective failure, and those are collective issues that should be addressed, along with those that come from other communities. And we know we have people who are skilled and passionate and capable to tackle those problems. And so sometimes you just need representatives of those communities to be able to give voice to what those needs are, voice to how to help everyone succeed, with an eye on intention of those communities, to give voice to the problems that may occur, and not let them fall by the wayside. You know, one thing I like to think about someone like me is, if I'm in a room, you're gonna understand, you're gonna hear that intentionality, and I'm not gonna let you gloss over it or move past it until we adequately address it. And so sometimes you need those people. And so I believe that having that richness and fruitfulness of the Black community represented throughout our political landscape will give voice and bring new solutions and strategies that, again, will help everybody succeed and thrive.
So this is the part that's hard,
Okay.
right? Because we know there's a problem. We live it every day. How do we access this power?
Unfortunately, power is not given, it's taken, right? And that doesn't mean, violently, but it means collectively. I was talking to some friends and they were very dismayed and just disenchanted with the idea of like voting and really contemplating like leaving the country and just being like, this is too much. And I said, well, I have to believe, 150 million people voted in the national election, roughly around there, 160. There's like 350 million people in this country, which means half the country didn't have their voice heard. So I have to believe that there are more people out there, more people in San Jose, more people in Santa Clara County that want to see change for the better for everybody. Real progress that says I can thrive, you can thrive, your kids can thrive, we can thrive. All our communities can thrive and move forward in a place where we can access whatever this American dream is supposed to be. And so I have to believe that. And I think the way you access that political power is by really connecting with people, really being diligent enough to say, hey, I want something that we haven't seen yet. I think you do too, let's talk about that. And then you build on that. And then you don't take no for an answer. You don't just settle with the idea that you have to play the game to win. It's playing the game, playing the game to win doesn't get us a win. It doesn't, you don't win if you play the game to win. You have to really be bold and stand, stand on where you're trying to go. And the interesting thing is, Chuck, the political right and the MAGA movement is doing that. And they're doing it and succeeding at it. It's just the direction is wrong. But they have stood on, we are not budging. And I think if we have some folks that aren't gonna budge on ensuring that everybody has what they need to survive, ensuring that there's equity, true equity in funding for our schools, that our kids deserve what they need, that people are making the wages that they have to make to survive, that we have enough housing for everybody, right? Things that we need, healthcare for folks, not just some. If we have people that are willing to stand on those principles and not give up because they're risky, they may risk losing, there are enough people out there that will go with you, I believe it. And I think I saw some version of that just with the folks who are willing to spend all day in City Hall to speak and give public comment for me and then be disappointed at the end. I think people want something different, and I think there are enough people out there. You just gotta connect with those people, you gotta find them, you gotta help them see that their voice does matter from the little to the big, and then you make progress. And that's a long game, it's not a short game. If we fight for short-term wins, we lose. We lose a lot more than we gain.
Okay.
So
I thought then that you were an amazing candidate for District 3. That hasn't changed in my mind. Once again, I'm biased, but
appreciate it.
Is there any politics in your future?
I very spiritual individual, and I wait to hear from God on those messages. There was a time where I would have said never, absolutely not. And it wasn't even a long time ago. It was like 2 years ago. I was like, I'm not about to do this at all. This is ridiculous. But I won't say never. But I won't forecast a win either. I don't know. I have to see. The time has to be right. The situation has to hit me on what that is, because I don't want to be somebody who just jumps into this political sphere just because. There's definitely a level of intention that I'll know when it's time, if that time comes. But I'm not afraid of it. I'm not afraid of it, and I'm willing to do it for my family, for my friends, for my community, when that time comes. In the meantime, though, we build that collective power to say that, like, look, if you don't want what's best for the people, we don't need you. And they need to know that there are people out there willing to say that to them. And I am, because we don't need them.
This work that I've been doing is really focused on trying to create explainers, essentially, for people to understand what's really happening before it's too late. And I feel like not only sometimes am I yelling into an abyss, I wake up every morning with the sounds of an alarm, because it's getting worse, and it's happening quickly. But I'm encouraged by people like you.
Oh, thank you.
Because I think you are a part of the solution. And the Black Leadership Kitchen Cabinet is just simply an amazing grouping of people, of souls that are dedicated to our community, our larger community. But what Sawubona is focused on is core to our survival. If we're not in the room, if we're not at the table, they don't speak our name and we disappear. Yeah. I think what you're trying to do for our community deserves every minute bit of power and support that we can give you, because I think that's what's going to make the difference. So I usually ask at the end of this, so how do we change this? I think you are the change that you want to see.
Yeah, I agree with that, Chuck. I've been recently inspired by one of my best friends who I went to college with, Garland Gilchrist. He's Lieutenant Governor of the state of Michigan, which is where I'm from, and he's running for governor. And had you asked me, 20 years ago now at this point when we were graduating from the University of Michigan, would Garland be governor? I would have been like, I don't think so. But it wouldn't surprise me, because he's one of the sharpest, smartest, most personable individuals I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. And when he said he was running for governor, I said, if Garland can put himself out there on this national stage continuously, then why can't I do something, and do something big and bold, and be willing to do that? And I see my wife do it. I see my friends do it. I see you do it. And I'm here. I'm here to do what's necessary. And I think our voices need to be heard. We need to tell these stories. We need to continue to show up. And we just got to take it a step further. And so I'm here for the long haul. And I look forward to my kids seeing that too, and then them being inspired to continue the work. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be part of this change.
Well, Jahmal, thank you. Thank you for all you do and all you will do. I think it's important for us to all recognize that this change won't happen if we don't commit ourselves to it as a whole community, as all of us, as each and every one of us. We have to be the change that we want to see. I want to thank you for joining us again. This has been Dying to Stay Here.